This is the Atheist Guide to Spiritual Awakening. I'm your host Walter, and this episode is about those damned feelings. Our feelings are at the same time our biggest sources of joy and our biggest sources of pain. So, how can we use them properly and try to make them our best friends and not our worst enemies? This episode will explore this. So, what are feelings? Feelings are the way our body experiences something happening to us. It can be directly linked to something happening from the environment, like we get stung by a bee and it hurts, so it's pain. Or it can be something that scares us, so sudden fear, and we feel it in our body in a very intense way. It can also be positive, like seeing something beautiful and feeling a sense of maybe love for that experience. Feelings are there to attract our attention to what is happening, and that's why during our evolution they served us very well. So they are simple, fundamental, useful, and intense experiences that we have. Now, feelings are not only generated by something coming from the external world. If we are thinking about something and imagining how that something will unfold in the future, then we will, along the path of our imagination, also experience maybe fear, maybe joy, maybe curiosity, maybe excitement, or anything else that comes out in that simulation of the future that we draw in our mind. Why are then our feelings also our worst enemy? Because if we get caught in a loop in our head where we reinforce especially negative feelings, then we can even drive ourselves sick when we go to the extreme. Anxiety, which is fear that is prolongated across a long period of time, is extremely detrimental for our physical well-being and our mental well-being, obviously. Before we get into what we can do with our feelings and how to manage them, let's look a little bit about some categories of feelings. I like a lot the way that spiritual people generally categorize feelings. They say they are the positive feelings, which are high vibrational, positive, exciting, pleasurable, which are love-based feelings. And then you have negative feelings like fear, guilt, shame, and others, which are low vibrational and not pleasant to experience. So why are there love-based feelings and fear-based feelings in that categorization? Because love-based feelings are the ones that bring us forward and push us into a direction that is creative, positive, and that evolve our life in a way that makes it better. The fear-based feelings are the ones which hold us back. So, for instance, take shame. Shame is the fear of being excluded from society. Take guilt. Guilt is the fear of having done something wrong that we can't repair. Pure fear, obviously, is fear-based. If we meet with a bear, we will have a little bit of a fear experience. Now, there is no judgment attached about feeling love-based or fear-based feelings. Both are useful. If we want to create something, then the love-based feelings are very useful. But if we want to avoid dying or being hurt, the fear-based ones are useful too. So where is the problem? The problem is that feelings are supposed to be useful in the moment. I am walking, a car is coming my way, I'm afraid, I jump out of the way, calm myself down and continue walking. That is absolutely the way we should handle fear. I'm thinking about going to a party. My first thought, because I'm a little bit weird, is to go there naked. Then there's a feeling of shame coming up. Nah, maybe that will exclude me from society. Let's dress up and go to the party dressed. These are all proper ways to handle a feeling in the moment. The feeling tells us something, we analyze it, we decide. The first set of problems that we can see with feelings is that if we don't do the little, taking a little time to analyze why the feeling is there, we can be completely caught up in the feeling and run on autopilot, basically. Every time I go out, I'm afraid because of some past experience I had. This is not a productive fear. We don't even know most of the time why we are afraid. We are just afraid. And then it controls our life in ways that are not productive. The other problem with feelings is the feelings that are coming from our own thoughts. Okay, it's fine if I'm evaluating a scenario. For instance, I want to build something, I want to create a company, or I want to do anything. Projecting ourselves to the future and going through the steps of what it means and experiencing some fear, some excitement, and some other positive or negative feelings is a good thing, because it's part of the exploration of that option that we are contemplating to see if it's scary or if it feels good or so on. That's not a problem. The problem starts when we are looping over the same scenarios in an obsessive way and start feeling constant fear being anxiety, about something that we don't have any additional data about. Basically, we don't have more information, but we go over and over and over on the same forecast we make about the future and experience a constant state of anxiety. This is a problem because being in a state of anxiety is not only impacting the way we think about that specific scenario that is making us anxious, but it's impacting all the other things we will do in that day or in that moment or in that week or whatever time frame the feeling keeps going. So managing our feelings is very important, and it makes us more productive, more happy if we know how to deal with each and every feeling that is coming up. Normally, we are supposed to learn that early in life during childhood, but we are in a weird society. We are in a society that is increasingly busy, overworked, dealing with problems that seem to be gigantic, and it means that neither our parents nor us have really the time in simple scenarios to play out those feelings and learn to deal with them. That doesn't mean that we can't learn it now, for instance. So I will go through a certain number of negative feelings in order to explain what they are there for, how we should ideally deal with them in the present moment, and what can be the pathological ways they impact our life if we don't deal with them. So let's start with pure fear. As I was saying before, a car is coming your way, you are afraid, you take action by jumping out of the way of the car, then you calm yourself down and continue walking. That's a healthy way of dealing with fear. Now that's not the only thing that happens. When you are experiencing fear, suddenly your mind is focusing on the source of the fear. So in this case, why didn't I see the car coming before? Oh, because I was looking at my phone while walking. So maybe there's a lesson to be learned also in this moment. So when you continue walking after and rethink about the event, it's a good idea to draw some lessons out of it and internalize them. Like, I will not walk in the busy street with my phone in my hand. As we saw in the episode about trauma and brain programming, in the early childhood or any time in life, when we experience very strong feelings, we might draw conclusions that are overgeneralizing things. So in my example about a car coming towards you, maybe the conclusion we would draw if we were a 5-year-old is that going out in the street is dangerous, and we would internalize a lesson which is never go out and become afraid of the outside world, while what we should have learned and what our parents could have helped us to learn is that we need to be careful on the street with cars. So being specific and not overgeneralizing. But life is not perfect, our parents are not perfect, we are not perfect, so we sometimes internalize things in a not completely productive way. That doesn't mean that we can't revisit our automatic reactions based on feelings that pop up in the present moment. We can always go back, rethink why we are afraid, is that productive, and slowly retrain our brain to have a bit more specific way of dealing with the feeling. So that's what I said about fear is true for any other feeling. So I will go through a certain number of others that are usually high impact in our lives. One of the strongest fear-based feeling is shame. Shame is the fear of being excluded from our community through our own actions. That's why it's a fear-based emotion, and it's very important not to be excluded from the community, especially during our evolution. It was very important because a single human in the middle of the wilderness is not very likely to survive. Now, in the modern world, shame most probably plays a little bit less important role, but that doesn't mean that our biology adapted to this new world, which is safer in many ways. So if we internalize shame-based feelings, they can still be a very high impact driver of our lives, even if the source of the shame is not really irrational. Some examples of not that productive shame feelings are our body image, generally our imagination of what other people think about one part or the other of our identity, our sexuality, our sexual preferences, our gender identity, which is a big topic nowadays. All these things can drive very intense shame feelings, which, if we would really look deeper, are not justified. If I take a personal example, I mostly spent 20 years of my life worrying about how my nose looks. So I was ashamed about having a slightly crooked nose, which is completely stupid, because if I would have simply taken the time to ask other people what they think about my nose, they would have said that it gives character to my face and it looks actually good on me. Now, in my personal case, this came out from comments from parental figures about my nose. Just to be clear, telling to a kid that some part of his physique is bad is the stupidest thing a parent can do. Now, parents are whatever they are programmed in the way they are. So the goal here is not to judge them or to hate them or to be angry at them. The goal is just, if you are a parent, try to pay attention, not to shame, your kid about some part of their body. It can lead to very interesting downstream consequences in their lives, and that's not what we want as parents. In my opinion, shame-based automated behaviors or programmed behaviors are very difficult to heal because it's a strong feeling, it's a negative feeling, it's a feeling we want to avoid at all costs, and that means that we have issues revisiting their root cause, and what I explained in that episode about healing, about how to calmly revisit the situation where the pattern emerged and try to reprogram it in a more adult and functional way. That doesn't mean that it's not worth doing it, it just might be a little bit more difficult than with other types of feelings. Let's move on now to guilt. The goal of the guilt feeling is to realize that we did something wrong and, again, not to get excluded from the society. So it's the fear of exclusion, but not based on some anticipated behavior, but based on something that we already did. The proper way to handle guilt in the moment is to ask for forgiveness, explain that it was not on purpose that we did those things, extend an offer for help, do everything possible to fix the consequences of what we did wrong, and move on. The moving on part is really important, because if we feel guilty for weeks, months, years for something where we did everything possible to fix the situation that we created, then we are just continuously keeping ourselves in a bad mood, in a negative state of mind. And as I said, any negative emotion, if it's lasting, it's impacting everything you do in your daily life, and it's not productive. Another interesting negative feeling is sadness. The goal of sadness is that we take some time off. So sadness is reducing the amount of energy we have. Take some time off to reflect on some past event that didn't go well. So we are sad because of a loss of a loved one, or we are sad because of the failure of a project that we did. The feeling of sadness is supposed to make us go more introspective, stop doing all kinds of things, and reflect on what happened in order to learn some lessons from it. Now again, sadness that is prolongating for a long period of time is what we call depression. So if we continue, if we push through the sadness but don't clear it up by doing the introspection, learning the lesson and letting it go, our brain, our body considers that we didn't do the job that we needed to do to learn something. And if we don't take the time to learn, then the sadness will carry on and will finally lead into depression. Another way that sadness converts into depression is if the sadness is continuously coming from our daily activities. We have a job we hate. We go to the job we hate because we are afraid of not surviving if we don't do it. We don't take the time to reflect on why we hate the job, what other things we could do instead of this job, and how to improve our life. Well, our body will become insistent, or our mind and body will become insistent on take some time, think it through, do something about it. And if we look at modern psychology, covering the feeling of sadness with, for instance, antidepressant is actually forcing your body to normalize something that you don't like. And if you normalize for too long something that you don't like, you're still in a depressed state, except that you don't feel it, and you become numb, maybe, to this activity that you do every day, that you are forced to do, that you force yourself to do, and you still don't go inward, introspect, and try to find something more productive to do. So personally, I had a 6 months experience with antidepressants. This was the worst possible period of my time, of my life, because it gave me the impression that everything was fine. I was doing my daily activities as I did them before, but another part of me, almost like a fragmented part of me, was continuing to say, what the hell are you doing, Walter? Why are you doing this? This is not what makes you happy. So under antidepressants, continuing to do what made you depressed in the first time is a recipe for becoming number and still not being happy. And being happy sometimes is a good idea, because at the end of the day we have this life, maybe only this one, and if you don't sometimes have positive experiences, then it's becoming very much worthless to live. And that feeling of worthlessness of life is, I don't think, the goal of a human being. A final negative emotion I want to discuss is anger. Anger is generally compensating for another negative feeling, usually fear or sadness, and it prevents us from freezing in the moment, from perpetuating that feeling across time or staying in the way of danger. And it actually gives us a sudden burst of energy to do something about, so we rebel against the situation we are in. I'm afraid of that bear coming towards me. I don't know what to do. I'm getting angry, and maybe I throw a rock in his eye and that solves the problem. I'm feeling sad about my daily life. Something comes on top that makes me feel even worse about it. And maybe I will get angry, shout at my boss, and the situation will solve itself by itself. Now, I don't say it's a good idea to rely on anger to solve situations, but that's the goal of anger, is to unblock a situation before it's too late. Now, there is also a link between feelings and judgment. Judgment of oneself, I mean. If you react with anger in a situation, you will say, oh, I'm an angry person, that is so bad. That doesn't help anything. If you listen to the episode about free will, we didn't decide to be an angry person or to be a scared person. The only question is, how do we change so that we become more productive towards ourselves and others? And the real solution for that is to learn to manage the feelings in the moment, and with a certain level of awareness that prevents the feeling from completely becoming our master, but the feeling just becoming part of the equation on how we act in the world. In order to get there, in order to be able to take that distance, manage the feeling in the moment and let it go, our meditation practice helps us, because what we do during meditation is to be in a neutral state, watch our breath. Then a thought or a feeling comes up, and we just label it. We say fear, we say overthinking, we say worry, and we move back to our breath. We can carry this skill that we are developing during our meditation practice into our daily life. For instance, when a feeling emerges, we can progressively learn to take a breath just before we react. So moving from a purely reactive way into one where we take that little distance that gives us time to think through what we will do. When we do that over and over, we'll realize that many of our feelings are just passing through. We identified something, the feeling came. If we don't do anything, that's also good. So take a breath every time the feeling comes, look at what you should do, and if it's nothing, then just move it move with your breath that feeling out of your body. Imagine it leaving your body from the top of your head, for instance. These visualization techniques are useful because when we move our attention from in various parts of our body, then the feelings in some way follow that movement of attention, or the energy, as some people say. Now, warning, this takes time. I mean, I'm meditating since 10 years. Okay, with a way too serious break in the middle that didn't help. And I still get caught in my feelings now and then. Now, in this very specific few past weeks, I'm facing a lot of problems coming from the real life. And honestly, 10 years ago, I would most well have been already in a deep depression. Now, I'm not doing great, but I'm managing the things one after the other as they come. And this is really helpful. I talked mostly about negative feelings, but not all positive feelings are great neither. There are many positive feelings that can turn into addictive behavior to regenerate or recreate that situation which gave us the positive feeling. Everyone is different, so I don't know what in your life is keeping you into loops where you do over and over the same things to create some positive body feeling or reaction or emotion. But for instance, I'm a smoker, so every 45 minutes to an hour I'm smoking a cigarette because it gives me a dopamine rush, and this is definitely not a positive outcome in my life. At minimum, it costs me money for nothing, and I stink. Another example is being overexcited by something. We imagine a certain activity or a certain project or a certain plan we want to work towards. We get very excited and we don't take the time to step back a little and see, okay, is this excitement justified? Or am I just matching the outcome, which I don't know if it will materialize, with the feeling of success that leads to the excitement now? So positive feelings, negative feelings, they're all just feelings, and we should all handle them the same way. When they come, we take a breath, we reflect a little bit, and then we take action if action is needed. You most probably heard me say that already, but the crowd that says that reality doesn't care about your feelings is as wrong as the crowd that says that feelings are everything. Feelings, like thoughts, like anything else, is just data that you process in order to reach some conclusions, decisions, behavior changes, learnings, wisdom, whatever it is. They are important, but they are not everything. Thoughts are important, but they are not everything. I will at some stage do an episode about identities, personas, and how we wear our identities and why. But both thoughts and feelings are linked to what we think about ourselves. If I go back to my example about having a slightly crooked nose, it wouldn't have mattered in the past to me if I wouldn't have thought that actually being attractive is a very important part of someone's identity. And why is it important? Because I had the deep need to be loved, and I thought that looking good is something that would attract more people to love me. But if I go deep down, the real identity hiding under this need of being loved was a needy identity. It's the identity of little Waltika, so little Walter, that needed the love that he didn't get and is chasing it from childhood into adulthood. And this needy identity is not serving well, because honestly, you should love yourself because you are the only one that can do it properly. You know yourself, you know what you want and need, and you need to be able to provide that to you. It doesn't mean that having a love relationship or having a loving relationship with friends and family is not important, but if it becomes a need to be loved, then it's also an open door for disappointment for multiple reasons. First, people can't know everything you need, and second, they don't have any obligation to fulfill your needs. So relying on others to feel a part of yourself that you can't make happy by yourself is a recipe for disaster in human relations. So to summarize this episode, we should try as much as possible to handle feelings in the moment, listen to what they have to say, take a breath, decide what to do with it, spend some time afterwards, if we are not very happy with the way we acted or reacted, to revisit the situation, try to understand why we did it and reprogram our mind. Avoid at all costs to do loops of overthinking where the feelings get more and more intense, because you will mess up your chemicals and impact the whole rest of your life. And try to be happy in the moment. This was the Atheist Guide to Spiritual Awakening, and this episode was about feelings. Please give me a like and share if you like this episode so that we can spread the word. Have a nice day.